There is a lot of fear out there, a sense that the world is fraying and that people are losing their way and that the structure and order we had in the world around us just a few decades ago is gone. And now we're in the midst of not only social upheaval, but crisis. But folks, I've spent years learning, counseling, and teaching in the area of psychology, and as such, I listen below the surface, past the noise and confusion and what seems to be chaos. And I'm of the belief that what we're seeing now isn't the end. It's a reorienting, perhaps even a reckoning. And much of what we're seeing isn't broken, but rather it's just finally things that are being seen. You see, the internal architecture of how we perceive our own identity and that of others is the same as it's always been. The way we make sense of ourselves, the way we wrestle with truth, longing, and contradiction, none of that has changed. It's always been the same. What is changing, however, is the scaffolding, the culture, the permission. These days, we live in a time where expression is no longer gated by tradition, silence, or shame. People aren't more broken than they used to be. They're just more exposed, more performative, more raw, and more outwardly real and authentic. And yes, that does feel chaotic. But it's also a kind of revelation. We're not witnessing moral collapse, we're witnessing the surfacing of what has always been there. The grief, the joy, the fragmentation, the yearning for a world of nothing more than fairness, equality, and heartfelt respect. But here's the twist. In this moment of visibility and unrest, many who call themselves thought leaders, from social media influencers to politicians and even to preachers, are seizing the chaos as a rallying cry, not to heal, but to recruit, not to listen, but to give them the sense of taking advantage of the chaos to lead louder and stronger, but not necessarily good or effectively. They offer certainty in exchange for allegiance. They name enemies to forge identity. They turn unrest into fuel, not for understanding, but for power. And in that noise, it's so easy to forget that the loudest voice isn't always wise, and the most viral message isn't always the truth. In fact, many of the voices dominating our feeds and headlines, the ones shouting from the far ends of the spectrum, are statistical outliers. They don't represent the mean. They represent the margins, and yet they've somehow become the face of the movement because their antics capture attention and headlines more so than those of us who occupy that broad span in the middle. But with all of the noise around us, we need to remember just because a voice is amplified doesn't mean it's representative. Just because the voice is provocative doesn't mean it's prophetic. The question isn't then, what's wrong with people? The question is, what do we do with this flood of new visibility? How do we respond, not with fear, but with depth? Because here's the truth we often resist. Any change from the familiar can feel uncomfortable, sometimes even threatening. That's not weakness, it's just the way we're wired as people. But fear doesn't have to be a wall. It can be a signal. It can be a source of energy. It can be a call to reorient. If we can learn to sit with that discomfort, to name it, honor it, and channel it, then we can move forward towards something new, not just reactively, but intentionally, as we begin to wrap our new reality around the fact that by giving others respect, we don't lessen the respect we already command and are due. Rather, we solidify it because giving respect to others results in our receiving it in return from them. And once the door to social change is opened, a deeper truth is revealed to us. if we're open to look anew. But whether we're open to it or not, once the light of inclusion and authenticity spills in, that door can't be shut again. We can't go back to the good old days because the good old days are merely selective snippets of memory that we've come to idealize. Now, I'm not saying that the good old days were bad. I am saying, however, that the good old days are gone and will never return. So what we have now is the chance to shape the good new days. Days not built on nostalgia, but on courage, on clarity, and on connection. And here's where we have to shed light on our lived experience. Not just what we think, but what we feel. Because the affective domain, that realm of emotion, intuition, and embodied truth, is far more influential in our lives than we often admit. And when our thoughts, behaviors, and feelings are misaligned, we live in dissonance. But when we bring them into harmony, when we feel what we believe and act from that place of coherence, we become whole. That's not just a personal healing, that's a cultural transformation. And if we orient ourselves toward that, not just as individuals, but as whole communities, then the future isn't something to fear. The future is something to co-create.